I was in a music business class at Berklee College of Music, and it was called Music Products. And it was about all the types of things in the music industry that had to do with actual goods, like developing equipment and that kind of thing, but also strings and just the economics and business of the music equipment world. So music products, the actual physical things, not even necessarily, CDs and vinyl, but the actual tools and the things that have to do with making music. And I had a teacher, my professor, her name was Stephanie Keller, and she was really great. And she sometimes would sprinkle little gems of wisdom. Some of them had to do with a memorable segment about how to finance a car, but the one that stuck with me the most was she once said, kind of offhand, guys, one thing that you should know is the things that you want to accomplish with music are not going to be solved because you got a new piece of equipment. There's no new piece of equipment that you need to be able to make the music that you want to make. And she kind of let it sit there for a while. And she kind of drove it home and was saying, you are always going to continue to think that there's something you need to get that then will make you the musician that you want to be. But I'm telling you, there's no piece of equipment that will turn you into the musician that you want to be. And that always stuck with me for years. It, of course, is very true. And today, on Earth Tones episode 17, my favorite number, Does Gear Matter? Welcome to Earth Tones episode 17, Does Gear Matter? Of course gear matters. We love gear. But before that discussion, a sound from our beautiful Earth. An interesting sound. That is the murmuring of a crowd that has just been told to talk amongst themselves. I was playing down in Florida with my brother for the Naples Brass concert we were doing for Veterans Day, and there was a technical glitch with the live streaming that happened right before we began. And they told our director, Steve, and he said, okay, everybody, we have to wait a few minutes to get the live stream up and live, so how about everybody talks amongst themselves? So that's like about 600 or so people talking amongst themselves. So for a bit of old news, I pulled out a book from the bookshelf here called Selling Sounds, The Commercial Revolution in American Music. And on the front, there's the Victrola with the dog taking a little nap or playing with the Victrola there, the gramophone. And I opened it up. This is a great book all about the history of recorded music and how the business of selling music has gone all the way from the old days of selling sheet music up through the record industry and how that evolved. And one of the most amazing artists that was most important to recorded music, but often not talked about that much these days, is Enrico Caruso. Enrico Caruso made a few hundred recordings and sold millions of records. He was an extraordinary opera singer, and his voice was so powerful and so beautiful that everyone, once you had access to recorded music, wanted Enrico Caruso in their home. So this here is an excerpt I pulled out of Selling Sounds. It's a picture of Enrico Caruso with Helen Keller, and it says, "So extraordinary was Caruso's voice that it could even move Helen Keller, who had, quote, listened to him sing the Lament of Samson from Camille Saint-Saëns's opera Samson and Delilah through her fingers, placed on his lips and throat. According to Voice of the Victor, tears welled up in her eyes as Caruso sang, and afterward she whispered, 'Wonderful, wonderful.' Voice of the Victor, June 1916. That is incredible. Imagine that you have such a beautiful voice that Helen Keller is able to hear it with her hands. That is beautiful and so cool. So today, for the main discussion, does gear matter? Well, I think it does. I love a good piece of gear, and who doesn't like trying to get cooler and better pieces of equipment? But it's all over now because I found my holy grail of all holy grails. I've got the amp and the guitar that I've wanted forever, and now I've got them, and it's all over. If anyone wants to buy all my old stuff, let me know. I'll sell you everything else. Okay, episode 17. Tone is in the fingers. Of course it is. So why does gear matter? Great gear, whether it's instruments, effects, amplifiers, or anything else, is inspiring to use. There's music inside excellent guitars, and it starts to come out when you pick them up. Here's the thing, though. You don't appreciate it until you have a breadth of experience. What matters the most is learning to work with what you have. Different environments and scenarios require you to adapt to changing contexts. Maybe that sound you had in your room was really great. Then at band practice, you were completely drowned out by the other musicians. Or maybe you thought your amp was dialed in perfectly last night. You set it up the same way in a new place, and it sounds like pure mud. You learn what your gear does by doing the job it was made for, making music. Then, when you acquire a sweet piece of equipment, you can tell why it behaves the way it does. If I had the amp I have now when I was 15, I'm not sure I'd even know why it was great. I'd probably wish it had distortion. If I had the acoustic guitar I have now when I was 15, I'm not sure I'd appreciate how musical and sensitive it is. You have to unlock these devices skill-wise, learn to appreciate their resonances, their dynamics, and why they behave the way they do. Gear absolutely matters, but the journey to appreciating it matters more. So, we're talking about gear. That's the thing. This year, I've been on my path of musical refinement, and I was joking about, now that I have my dream amp and guitar, you can have everything else. Well, of course, there are several things that I really like and would like to keep, but now I have this amp. I have a Two-Rock. It's a Studio Signature 35, and it's a very expensive, very fancy amp. But I've been playing for 30 years. And I now really appreciate why this little amp is so great. I've played in so many contexts, in so many different rooms, small, big, everywhere you can imagine. I've bought cool big amps that I thought was going to make me like Mr. Rockstar, and shown up to the gig and had them been too powerful. I've played theaters where I show up with this kind of thing and everyone gets mad at me for being too loud. I've gone the other way. I've shown up with like a cool little super boutique amp that I thought was going to be awesome, and then it wasn't loud enough. I've tried to dial in certain things that don't sound good. I've had the amp face the audience and not me, and everybody tells me I'm really shrill and too loud, but I still can't even hear myself. I've paid so many dues that have to do with how you can get your sound together that now I have this little amp, my Two-Rock. I position it right so that it faces me. It's tilted back, but not facing out towards the audience, facing me. I can hear it clearly. We can mic it up, and then it can be broadcast to the audience. And if we don't have a full PA like that, I can face it more forward so that the sound projects up and into the audience, and it all works out. I do not think if I had had all the money in the world and someone had given me that amp when I was 15, that I would appreciate it or know what to do with it. I started with a little crate amp, and I just played like everybody does. You turn on the distortion. Just today, I was teaching a lesson to a young student who had never really used distortion, and so we were playing Highway to Hell, and I put it on. I said, look, man, when you really get the distortion going, you realize you need to control the guitar like it's like a wild horse, because if you just let the strings go, they're going to feed back. It's a very technical thing to be able to use distortion. But we were doing that with a tiny little Frontman amp that, you know, it's very cheap and it has distortion on it. my first crate, I learned all those skills to do with muting and everything using my little crate with the built-in distortion. Only by playing something in a lot of different contexts and trying to get the music across do you learn why certain things do what they do. And I think that certain pro tools, before you learn why they are the way that they are, you don't appreciate them, and they might even be frustrating because you think, man, I don't get it. I don't get why this behaves the way that it does. Over time, you might come to appreciate, that's why it does it, because when I do this, it does this. When I zig, it zags, or it serves the musical purpose. So you might compare it to something else, like a nice acoustic guitar. You might feel like this sounds similar to the next one, but what will really make the difference is whether or not you feel musically inspired by it. That doesn't mean that you need fancy equipment. In fact, what I'm saying is whatever gear you have access to, you should learn how to make it work in every context you can, and then you will understand why really nice tools behave the way that they do. For example, my Tuvrock, every switch does something very specific that's extremely subtle. I really don't think I would have even been able to hear and appreciate what those things do if I hadn't spent all of those years playing all those different types of amps and saying, oh, this is cool, but I need a little bit more mids, or this is cool, but it's a little too bright. With my Tuvrock, I can come into a place and say, oh, this stage has a lot of low end. I can flip one of the switches to have a little bit less low end. Oh, I need a little bit more bite in the mids. I can flip this little switch. If I showed you what those switches were doing in one room, you might not even be able to hear what they do. But to me, that switch does exactly what I need it to do, and it's very simple. I don't think, had I not played for 30 years, I would even know what those things were supposed to be doing. And I think there's a lot of, overlap with sports equipment and cars. Definitely, if you cut your teeth driving something like a manual transmission car, it could be a pickup truck or anything, then when you start to drive something with a little bit more horsepower or something that's geared a little bit differently, you level up and you start to appreciate why things are the way that they are. And you start to appreciate that some of those more technical, advanced features are something that you actually want. So, what's on the turntable this week? That blues record from last week. It's so long. Jimi Hendrix Blues. This time I actually pulled it out because it was on the turntable and I pulled it over here. This was released in 1994. I'm now listening to the second. It's a 2 LP collection. You can listen to the whole thing online, of course. Alan Douglas was a record producer, did a lot of jazz, and he worked with Jimmy at the Band of Gypsys very end, and then he became the archivist, and he was in control of the master recordings before Experience Hendrix got back control of everything. So Alan Douglas, he's a bit controversial because he would do things like take things from the archive and replace the drums with session musicians or replace rhythm guitar parts. Some of those things are seen as very controversial, but I read that Mitch Mitchell actually agreed with many of the choices that he made. And so, he was doing what he had to do to serve the music, and I think that's what's cool. But this is certainly a cool compilation of blues songs. Check out the Jimi Hendrix Blues album from 1994. All right, something that helped me this week. Showing up early, trying to not be stressed out. I played with the Attractors, and I hate parking so much. I've been stressed about how I'm going to park at this particular club we play, the Plow and Stars, and I was like, I'm just going to get there early. I got there at 9:05. The gig was at 10. That doesn't sound that early, but we're not even allowed to load in until 1:15. And just having enough time to park and chill. Or this week, playing with my brother in Florida, just getting there an hour early than what I really had to. I think the stress of trying to get in and set up, it affects the music in a way that I don't want it to. I want to be able to be chill, and the only way I can do that is to be able to just get there a little early. So reducing stress when possible, just being able to sit in traffic and to know you're still, despite that traffic, going to show up on time. I realized this week, I'm trying to hang out a lot of the time. And if I can do my hanging out at the gig instead of at the studio trying to squeeze every minute of like relaxation before the gig, that's better. If I can take a nap in the car before the gig, that's even double better. So let's see. A musical demonstration for the week. Say you have a piece of equipment that you're trying to get in touch with. One of the great ways to see if you've got a magical piece of equipment is to play with dynamics. Then you'll see what I'm talking about, where if something responds or not. If you take a plain chord, Julian Lage was talking about connecting to the guitar and playing this D, which is just a D5, open D string, then the note A, D, and A. It's just a D5. But you can really feel the resonance of the instrument. Now this guitar is not my new Martin, which I'm really excited about. This is the one I've got a million miles on when I was a teenager. Now this is a good guitar. It's not as good as the one I've got now, but I was very lucky that I had someone at Guitar Center. His name was Sean Zwemke. And I was a teenager, and I walked in. I had saved up money all summer long to buy an acoustic guitar, mowing lawns. And I went in and I said, I want an acoustic, and I want a good one, and I've got X amount of dollars. And he said, this is the one you want. Try a bunch, but check this out. This is actually a really good guitar for the money. And sure enough, it was. If you can see it on the video, it's completely falling apart. The top is spruce and it's lifted up off the sides. It's split in half. I went to get it fixed and the repairman told me it probably wasn't even worth fixing. So I've taped it up and I entered the market for another guitar, and I've gotten that Martin now that I'm really excited about. But this one, I'm still playing it every week on Earth Tones. I'm still playing gigs with it. I'm making it last, and I've learned so much about how to play and how to get a sound by using this guitar for as long as I have. I've played it for hundreds and hundreds of gigs. It's probably down to maybe $1 per gig. If you think about what money I've got invested, it's probably $1 per gig. All right, that is episode 17. Check out Little Kitten Blues, my song. Look out for Train Track coming out soon. As always, visit jakepardee.com for more information about me and my music, maritimerecording.com about you and your music, and I hope that you are enjoying this. Send me some earth sounds. I could really use them. Record some random sounds out in the world and text me them, email me them, message me them on Instagram or something. Send me some earth sounds. I could use them because sometimes I forget and then I'm scrambling to get some sounds in. All right, I'm Jake Pardee signing off. Thank you for tuning in. I'm always here to remind you that we are a beautifully musical people on a distinctly musical planet. I will see you next time on Earth Tones, episode 18.